When you hear the words Iwo Jima, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's that one single image, right? The flag raising on Mount Suribachi. It's this powerful symbol of victory and sacrifice, a defining moment of World War II. But what if I told you that that single moment is just one frame in a much, much longer and more complicated story? Well, today, we're going behind the battle to uncover the hidden history of the island itself.
This quote, man, just cuts right to the heart of the matter. For one side, Iwo Jima is a place of mourning. For the other, it's a monument to victory. This comes from the son of a Japanese tank commander, and it perfectly sets up the tension we're going to explore. Two totally different ways of seeing the exact same piece of land.
So that's our big question for this explainer. How does one little patch of volcanic rock in the middle of the Pacific hold such radically different meanings for different people? Well, to figure that out, we have to go way back, long before the first shots of that famous battle were ever fired.
And our first stop might actually be a surprise for a lot of you. See, before Iwo Jima was a fortress, it, and the islands around it, were part of a remote, kind of forgotten, and believe it or not, a surprisingly international colony.
Okay, so check out this timeline. It tells a completely different origin story than you might expect. It doesn't start with Japan. It starts way back in 1830 with a diverse group of settlers, including an American named Nathaniel Savory. It's not until Commodore Perry shows up in 1853 that the big world powers even start to notice, and Japan doesn't officially claim the islands for another 22 years after.
And Perry, well, he was playing the long game. He wasn't just exploring, he saw these islands as a vital gas station or, a coaling station for America's growing trade with Asia. He even bought a little plot of land there for $50. It was this strategic thinking that really put the islands on the map and honestly set the stage for everything that was about to happen.
All right, so let's shift gears from the big geopolitical chess match to the people who actually called this place home. Because long before any soldiers set foot there were families, there were farmers and fishermen living their lives on Iwo Jima, and their story has been almost completely wiped from the history we all know.
Take a look at this number, 6,886. That's not a military statistic. That's how many civilians were evacuated from the Bonin Islands in 1944 as the war got closer and closer. This place wasn't just a military outpost. It was a community that was about to be completely uprooted.
And this table here breaks it all down. You can see that over 1,000 people, 1,004 to be exact, were forced to leave Iwo Jima itself. These were real families, many of them descendants of those original Western settlers, who had built a whole life there, with schools and shops, even a little inn.
And this is the real kicker. For those 1,004 people, that evacuation wasn't temporary, it was permanent. They packed up their lives, left their homes, thinking they'd be back. They never were. It's this deep personal tragedy that's been hiding in the shadow of the famous battle all this time.
Which brings us to the battle we all think we know. But now, we're seeing it with new eyes, right? This wasn't just a fight for a strategic rock. It was a battle over an island that was once someone's home, defended and attacked by men who, in the middle of it all, often found a strange, grim respect for one another.
You know, amidst all the brutality and horror of war, you find these moments of clarity. This quote from a U.S. Marine, "It's not about hate, it's about respect for his enemy's skill, for their tenacity." It's a powerful reminder of the humanity on both sides of that bloody front line.
And this image here really illustrates the end of that fierce resistance. After weeks of just unbelievably brutal fighting from this incredible network of underground tunnels, the battle didn't always end in some blaze of glory. Sometimes it ended just like this, with a quiet, exhausted surrender. At a memorial service right there on the island, a chaplain named Roland Gittelsone gave this incredibly powerful eulogy. He spoke about the immense, unimaginable cost, but also about a promise that a sacrifice this great had to lead to something better, to a new freedom. It's this profound hope for meaning in the middle of all that loss. But wait, the story doesn't end in 1945, not by a long shot. In fact, it just enters a new, very secret chapter. After World War II, Iwo Jima became a key American asset in a totally different global conflict, the Cold War.
Yeah, for 23 years after the war, the American flag was flying over Iwo Jima. The U.S. Navy administered the islands. It's a period that's often just a footnote in the history books. But for the people who were displaced, it was their entire reality.
And this is where things get really complicated and, honestly, pretty unfair.
In 1946, about 129 islanders of Western descent were allowed to return, partly because they were facing discrimination back in mainland Japan. But anyone of Japanese descent, they were banned, officially for security reasons. This policy created this deep, painful division between people who used to be neighbors.
So what were those security reasons? Well, the island served as an emergency airfield and a key navigation station. But here's the biggest secret of all. From 1956 to 1959, the U.S. secretly stored nuclear weapons on Iwo Jima. That's right, the island of the famous battle had become a quiet, top-secret atomic outpost.
And all of this brings us to the island today, a place that is still wrestling with these dual legacies. A legacy of war and displacement, of American victory and Japanese loss.
Finally, on June 26, 1968, after years of negotiations, the U.S. officially returned the islands to Japan. This was a huge moment. It marked the end of the American administration and the beginning of a new chapter. But it definitely wasn't the end of the story.
Because the story is far from over. I mean, look at this. Recovery efforts are still going on. Most of the Japanese war dead have never been found. The island is now a Japanese military base. And most importantly, for the original residents and their kids and grandkids, going home is still impossible.
So we end right back where we started, with two totally different views of the same island. It's an American symbol of victory, it's a Japanese place of mourning, and for a small, forgotten group of people, it's a home they can see but can never, ever return to. Which leaves us with one last question to think about. For them, has the battle for Iwo Jima ever really ended?